Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Ball. We have some great shows coming up for you, including a show of interviews from ICSC, the big retail conference in Las Vegas. We also have a show coming up on how to handle the press and public relations. Be sure not to miss a show of special interest to you. Sign up for a once-a-week email announcing the show topic at commercialrealestateshow.com. Today we're talking about industrial real estate. My guest is Alan Buchanan. He's a big producing industrial broker on the West Coast, and I'd like to get some tips from you, Alan, about for tenants. I mean, if this market's a little tough out there, tenants have to have the right strategies for their business to perform in this market, don't they?
You know, they absolutely do, and I really appreciate that question because up until this year, probably 70% of my business was occupant related. This year it's switched, and now about 70% of my business is owner related. But the pieces of advice that I would give to an occupant today, number one, allow yourself an awful lot of time to figure out what your alternatives are, because compliance regulations, as we just mentioned, a short supply of available inventory, it just takes significantly longer to affect a move if in fact that's your direction. Now, the second piece of advice I would give is, man, you need to engage great help, and that could come in the form of a commercial real estate practitioner, hopefully, or it could come in the form of an attorney. Frankly, I like both because we each bring a different skill set to that process. And the third thing I'd recommend is take a look at all your alternatives. It may be your desire to relocate, but I would sure not lock yourself into that position. Maybe with a couple of tweaks, maybe you add an office or two, maybe you rework your racking system. You know, maybe you consider bifurcating your operation where you take a portion of your warehousing, move that off-site, or a portion of your manufacturing, move that off-site, and you make that existing facility work. Because as we all know, even though we move companies for a living, moving sucks. I mean, it's disruptive, it's very cost inefficient, and rarely does it ever achieve the sort of efficiencies that you're looking to achieve. So those three pieces of advice are really my hallmarks, and if I get an occupant on the line, that's the conversation that I'm having with them.
And those are great tips. And also, if you think you want to stay where you are, you still have to be open and get out early enough to have options if you want to have any type of leverage, don't you?
Precisely. And a lot of our business this year, Michael, has been renewal business, especially with my West Coast client I mentioned. I handle their business around the West Coast. 100% of our deals with them this year have been renewals. And what I counsel of folks that want to renew is you have to create the illusion with your owner as though you have alternatives and as though you are willing to move. And let's face it, at a point you would be willing to move, even though that's not your intention. So you bet. And if that means you have to get in the car and go look at 2 or 3 places, if that means you have to solicit a couple of requests for proposal, then you do that, because that just simply strengthens your leverage with your landlord.
That's a great tip. You know, you have to have options because you never know what can happen to your first option, right? And you got to be ready for that. Well, let's talk about some tips for landlords in this market. I know it's more of a landlord market in all markets, but what are some tips for landlords?
Some tips for landlords and property owners in general. Today, your property is worth significantly more than you ever dreamed. And so if your sale horizon for that building is anytime in the next, say, 2 to 5 years, I would seriously consider selling the building today, because we don't know how much longer these Eisenhower era interest rates are going to last. And certainly we know where the pricing is today. And so those coupled create values that we've frankly not seen since 2007. And in many cases, we've eclipsed those values. So look at selling today if you have any desire over the next 2 to 5 years.
I think it's a good,
if your desire
good
is
point.
I'm sorry.
I think that's a good point. While these interest rates are this low and the market's as good, especially if you've got the other timings, right? You have enough term left on your lease and that sort of thing. But you have some more tips for maybe someone that has maybe some aging flex buildings?
I do. We're seeing a huge trend in the flex world and specifically in the office world. I mean, you and I both know folks work differently in office spaces today than they did when you and I started our careers. And as a result of that, the working environment has changed, but frankly, the product has not changed to support that. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of aging flex buildings in my marketplace. Buildings were built in the mid 80s because you could get much more for that type of product, and so a bunch of them sprung up. But now a lot of them are laying fallow. If there's one product class in our market that's really has a significant amount of vacancy, it's flex buildings. And so what I'm advising a lot of flex owners to do is, tear out that drop ceiling, tear out those big offices, open it up, allow some glass line, allow some light to come in, and create some creative spaces, if you will, because that attracts the new millennial office user that is looking for that kind of a work environment.
And you coined a phrase on the phone with me, misfit toys. Tell us about
Precisely.
that.
Right. So that was one of my favorite cartoons growing up as a kid. I mean, I grew up in Arkansas and I was kind of gullible, so I figured all reindeers could fly, right? But if you're familiar with a cartoon, there was the Island of Misfit Toys, where like the dentist that was an elf and the Jack in the Box that screamed, or whatever the case may be. But there are a lot of misfit toys in our market that ultimately can find a home if you can just figure out a creative way to repurpose the space.
Yeah, those are great tips. Well, Alan, thanks for joining us on Skype today. We appreciate you being with us.
It was my privilege and my honor, and my best to you and downtown Atlanta.
All right, thank you. And as Alan mentioned, it might be a time to sell, and even if you use your property for your business, next we'll talk about sell-leasebacks and some of the benefits and strategies. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show. We'll be right back. The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Bull Realty Commercial Advisors, a great place to do business. Visit bullrealty.com. RealNex, a comprehensive and powerful suite of commercial real estate tools at an incredibly low price. Visit realnex.com. That's REALNEX. Xceligent, the resource professionals use for commercial real estate information. Visit xceligent.com. That's XCELIGENT. Commercial Search, the source to market and source available properties for sale or lease. Visit commercialsearch.com. For more information on these great companies, or for additional videos, podcasts, or articles, visit CREshow.com.